Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'll be doing a poem called Sport by Paul Durcan. Essentially, it is a poem about the relationship between father and son over throughout the years. So bear with me. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to put them down below in the comments, or just email me or message me, and I'll be willing to help you out. Anyway, this poem is about a football match, but it's way deeper than that because it is about the relationship between a father and a son. How it works out is that, of course, sport is indeed a common language for males. It involves a lot of physical prowess, skill, competitiveness, and winning. Now, it is a subject that men can safely be emotional and openly passionate about, right? Why am I telling you this? It's because the son becomes as well emotional about his feelings towards his father and the way his father observes him throughout the match. And that's the fact that he does this in a game, in a football game, makes the relevance of this poem's name, sport, very important. The speaker can certainly talk the talk, mentioning spectacular saves and diving full stretch, like it's mentioned in the poem, to turn a certain goal, leaping high to tip another over the bar. Now, he describes how he's able to play the sport, and he describes motivation as, and I quote, that will to die, that is as essential to sportsmen as to artists. Now, very important to talk about how the father doesn't seem to have much small talk, even about sport. So there's some sort of a distance between the father and the child, and his response after the game is very important because it's so minimal that he only says, "Well played, son," nothing else after all this. Clearly, the son has been excited the entire time for the father watching him. He's very proud of himself. He's very happy that the father is there watching how he is playing and all that. So in what nowadays would be considered a very formal encounter, he shook hands with his son, which kind of again emphasizes the distance that they have between. Like normally, a father and a son wouldn't just shake hands. It's very unusual. The speaker colors the exchange negatively by the comment "sniffing your approval," like as if he spent all his life trying to gather, or let's say get the approval of his father, but he failed. And the fact that he is in asylum at the moment or in a mental hospital is very important because finally he's trying to get the approval of his father in a sports game, football game. In your eyes, I had achieved something at last. The telling phrase is "at last," suggesting that everything before had been a failure in the father's eyes. So as I just said, this poem is about a son who has tried to prove himself to his father his entire life but failed, and now finally there's this opportunity for him to prove himself in a certain manner, and he's trying to seize it. We need to be aware that the relationship is described only from the son's perspective, which is very different, by the way, from the other poem that I analyzed called Parents by the same poet, Paul Durcan. So we get only one side of this poem from the side of the son, but from his perspective, the relationship was never a very healthy one between him and his father. So maybe it's even his father, maybe his father is the reason that he's now in a mental hospital. We never know, we will never know. He doesn't feel like his father had much faith or confidence in his abilities, and this is evident through the lines, "There were not many fields in which you had hopes for me, but sport was one of them." So basically it's obvious that he's saying that you never ever hoped or you never believed in me, but finally now it is possible that you may actually, believe that I could do something about this. This devastating lack of parental confidence produces increased anxiety in the son, and now he says, "I was fearful I would let down not only my team, but you." So he's grouping his football team or his team with his own father at the same time. He doesn't want to let any of them down. Desire to win his father's approval outweighs everything else about the game. It seems like he cares more about the approval of his father than winning the actual game. It's like he's glancing and waiting for his father's reactions as he's on the side of the pitch, rather than focusing on winning. And it says, more than anybody, it was you I want to mesmerize, and this is evidence to that. There's an unhealthy degree of the need for affirmation in evidence here, probably caused by the lack of affirmation in the first place. So a vicious cycle develops. It seems that this is the single moment of praise that he remembers getting. It would appear that the father's minimalist approach to conversation after the game, when he says only "well done, son," was a missed opportunity for supportive discussion. But this needs to be considered in the culture of its time, the mid-1960s, where things were very much different in Ireland. Now, fatherhood was still primarily about providing a home, funding, and guidance, and love was expressed in that way rather than any other emotional articulation, because in today's society in Ireland or in a lot of fathers are different in that sense. They're no longer only about providing funding, a home, and guidance as in the poem. So we also have to bear in mind when the poem was written in 1960 rather than nowadays. However, it is true that for many reasons Paul Durcan did have a poor relationship with his father, and this is, by the way, this reflects on the life of the poet himself, which is very important because the reasoning behind the writing of this poem may be associated with the fact of the real life of Paul Durcan, and so maybe he was trying to express his own life into words by mentioning some sort of like an autobiography or some. As a young man, he was committed to a mental hospital against his will, which he didn't see the need for and much resented. Indeed, the image of the mentally ill patients here is quite negative. The way he describes himself being at the mental hospital and the way he describes the other, let's say, mental patients in the mental hospital as huge, wild-looking men with gap teeth, red faces, oily, frizzy hair, bushy eyebrows. All these terms are associated with negativity rather than positivity, and from this we can understand that the tone is very, let's say, resentful, negative, or else they were capable of shocking, gratuitous violence, like the alcoholic solicitor who castrated his best friend. This is like something he talks about in the poem itself, like a story, but he had no memory of it. And this imagery, this poem has very strong imagery, very vivid imagery that we can imagine as something that happens, and this is a very strong poetic technique that Paul Durcan uses. Basically, this poem can be viewed from one perspective, of the son's perspective, and it is very difficult to understand why the father was acting that way. Was it only merely because of the way things were in the 1960s, or has the son been a disappointment his entire life? So it's all about the excitement and anticipation of the father's reaction, which ends up in saying, "Well done, son," nothing more, nothing less, and shaking his hand. So comparing this to Ireland's 1960s society, fatherhood, how it was and how it is now, is also very important to understand. Try to put yourselves many years before and see how things were, or ask your parents about it and try to get a better grasp about the point of this poem. Anyway, this is a poem about relationships, and Paul Durcan's poetry is a lot focused in that area about relationships, love, and his own personal life as well. Basically, this is it. This is all I have for this poem. I hope I helped you guys, and in case you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. See you next time.